Hello everyone, welcome to Indian Economy by Aman Soni. In today's news hour, we shall be discussing the economy articles from the Hindu newspaper. In page 1 there is no news. In the editorial page, this article talks about the interrelationship between the geopolitics, economics, society and everything is related with the globalization and the world order. Let's go into the details of it. The article is beginning with the Russia-Ukraine conflict and how it is reshaping the world order. It goes back to the history where it says that after the fall of Berlin Wall in 1981, a new paradigm of societies arose, wherein the concept of free societies, frictionless borders, free movement of capital and goods, all this started. All this led to the idea of open economies, where the free movement of capital, goods, services happened. This concept is the globalization. So, because of the fall of borders, because of the open access to borders, the world free trade increased, the neoliberal ideas came up, and globalization happened, and because of which growth happened even in the third world. And even for India, the poverty was reduced because the GDP growth happened, and the global trade and per capita GDP almost doubled in the entire world. And because there was economic prosperity happening, it led to peace and prosperity. So here we need to understand that stable society with peace and prosperity will be an ideal condition for economic growth, and when there is economic growth it would lead to peace and prosperity, because if there is no economic growth there will be too much poverty and the crime rate can increase. There won't be stability in the economy, the revolts can happen, civil wars can happen, as we can see in the African nations. But if there is economic growth, at least everyone would get some share of the wealth, the standard of living of people would increase. So at that time it would lead to peace and prosperity. So further peace and prosperity will be an ideal situation for more economic growth. So this is a virtuous cycle between peace and prosperity, stability and the economic growth. The interdependence among the countries increased, and because of the interdependence of the countries with each other, the conflicts between them reduced, which helped in promoting the peace again. Here we need to understand, even though last year the conflict between India and China arose in the border, it did not escalate because both the economies are so intertwined, and the idea of international relations say that if the economies are intertwined, if there is too much trade happening between the economies, they don't want to go war with between those countries, because the economic prosperity would get affected, the revenues of the country would get affected, and if foreign exchange gets affected, the domestic economy will get affected, and it would have an overall impact on the economy itself. So it is an accepted wisdom in the theory that interdependence between countries will lead to fewer conflicts, and it would also promote peace. And we just discussed how having peace and stability in the domestic economy will lead to more economic growth, because it provides a base for economic growth to happen. And this interconnectedness and trade is beneficial for all the countries. That is the positive aspect of interconnectedness and trade, because it will lead to fewer conflicts and promote peace. But at the same time, because of the Russia Ukraine conflict, this generally accepted principle got disrupted. Nobody thought that Russia would go to war with Ukraine, because the European economies and the Russian economies were deeply connected for the oil trade, the natural gas trade. But it happened. So now we are seeing the flip side, the negative side of the interconnectedness. If we are too highly interconnectedness, the positive aspect is the growth that is happening. But now because we are so interconnectedness, the disruption happening will also have an impact on us. That is, the disruption and the blockades will have the impact on the supply chains. Now we can see how the trade with Russia is getting affected, how the sanctions on Russia are impacting everyone. The fertilizer prices in India are increasing, the oil prices are increasing. Because of disruption of shipping and the supply chains, the global shipping costs are increasing, container shortages are happening, the chip manufacturing is getting affected, because of which automobile sector and the electronic sector is getting affected. So in a globalized world when everything is interconnected, we can now see the flip side of the interconnectedness. That is, any blockade or disruption to the supply chain will affect everybody else who is connected in. The article gives examples here. The Egyptians are now having food shortages because they were highly dependent on the Russian wheat, and because of the conflict, the Russian wheat is not supplied there. And the Germans are suffering from high cost of heating in winter because they are heavily dependent on the Russian gas. And the Americans are going to face shortage for the electric cars because the electric car needs batteries, and the batteries production main component is the nickel, which comes from Russia. Now that raw material is getting affected, the supply of the raw material is being affected, so the final output, that is the electric car in America, is getting affected. And we can see how the fertilizer costs are increasing in India for the Indian farmers because we used to import more fertilizers from Russia Ukraine region. So when the idea of globalization came, the idea of global village came up, wherein the entire world is like a village which is connected with each other because of the free movement of capital, goods and services. And this idea of global village, it was built on the foundation of having interconnected transport networks, having interconnected supply chains, and adding to all this supply chain, the US dollar served as a link for the payment system, and we have integrated payment system. So we have trade happening, and to experience the trade and to do transactions, we have interconnected payment systems, and the US dollar is serving as a link currency. So the system had evolved to such an extent there, the US dollar represented as a global currency was happening smoothly. India too benefited from this new system, and India's trade got tripled at this point of time in terms of GDP in the last 3 decades, and it also led to vast number of jobs. Because of globalization, the service jobs from the Western world got sent to India, and here the business process outsourcing, the call centers and the service sector and the Indian IT sector boom, all this happened because of which huge number of jobs started happening in the Indian economy. But if we were in isolation or if we are going to follow protectionism, this would not have been possible. Now the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which was just a political conflict, has turned into a geo-economic conflict. Here we need to see, earlier the term usage would have been geopolitical conflict. Now because the conflict has so much impact on the economies, the conflict is being termed as a geo-economic conflict. And the nations are divided here. Those nations which would not criticize Russia for its aggressions, they make up for the majority of the population, but their economy in terms of the global economy is low. But all the Western countries, their population is low in the global world, but when it comes to the economic share, they have 3/4 of the global economic share. So one side we have numbers, other side we have economic share, and there is a conflict happening between the two because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So the article says that at this juncture, like we have a Cold War, now the reputations are going happening, and the trade economies are getting affected. And when the Western world is trying to think to move away from Russia and China bloc, it is opportunity for India. Why? Because now the Western world, they want to have a trade wherein the money and morals go together. Now because they are calling out Russia's annexation, now they want to trade with someone who is not into all this. So they are moving slowly, going away from Russia and China, and at this point of time, India has got the opportunities. We have the opportunity to build on a free but principled trade based on both morals and money. And India has the opportunity to become a large producing nation for the world and also economic powerhouse. Now we can use this opportunity to grow as a producer country, grow as a manufacturing country, and at the same time, because of increasing youth population, India can also become a huge consumer market. So imagine at the same time you are being a good producing country and the consumption country, how much economic prosperity can India get? But for that to happen, we need to have free access to trade, markets, and the proper global currency which is seamless, and the global transactions and settlement have to be seamless. Now we discussed in various articles that we were going for the Russia ruble and Indian rupees settlements. So the author says that dismantling a system where American dollar is accepted as the global link currency and trying to go for the local currency, it would have an impact in the longer term because the major share would come to India by exporting to the Western nations. And you are moving away from such a economic system which is against the principles of the Western nations. It is going to cost you in the future because it would indirectly affect your exports and the foreign exchange earning ability. So it would impact you. We should not be hurried into accepting a local currency as of now because the dollar as a world currency is established. At the same time, there are various negative aspects of dollar. So we need to wait and see, and we need to take steps slowly. We need to follow the agile approach and to see what is right at that particular point of time. The author says that we just we not just need a non-aligned doctrine when it comes to the political aspect, but we also need it for a geo-economic policy. When we have the external situation with rising inflation on one side, crude oil prices volatility, which would impact the Indian economy, and the global uncertainty, weak domestic private consumption, low rural consumption, and deterioration in the fiscal situation because of the increase in imports and reduction in exports. What we need is increasing our exports at that point of time, and the external trade which comes because of the changed global situation presents us the best opportunity. We need to use this opportunity and create more number of jobs in India. And India not just needs cordial relationship with nations on either side, but also we need a stable and established global economic environment because without peace and prosperity, the global trade can't happen. Now we can see because of the conflict, the global trade is getting disrupted. Even though the sanctions are on Russia, indirectly it is affecting every country who is trading with Russia. So we should not only adopt a strategic political doctrine, but also we should adopt a strategic economic self-interest doctrine. And that economic doctrine should be within the boundaries of the non-alignment foreign policy. So here we can relate this topic to IR and see that until now a foreign policy would mainly be with respect to the politics, but here we need to adopt a economic doctrine also. And for an economy to grow, as we discussed, peace and prosperity is very important. And for peace and prosperity, social harmony is very important because in order to remain a large production nation and to remain a large manufacturing nation, we need millions of workers in factories and millions of people working in harmony with each other, irrespective of the religion, class, race, caste, etc. So social harmony is the edifice of economic prosperity. Because without social harmony, the economic prosperity cannot happen. Because the people will be busy fighting with each other. Where will they be working? Where will they be putting their energy and efforts into productive economic activities? That is why social harmony is the base on which the economic prosperity will be built. So when we are going for the reshaping and realignment of the world order, it is opportunity for India to look back in our foreign policy, our economic policy, and the geopolitical strategy because everything is related. And being the world's largest democracy, it is a good opportunity for us to have peaceful social harmony and follow the non-aligned movement and at the same time capture the economic prosperity that is happening in the world. That's about this article, wherein the author nicely relates how economic prosperity, the geopolitical interests, and the social harmony and globalization, if you can appreciate, everything is interconnected. Here in this article, we covered the society aspect, the economy aspect, the international relations. So you can see how the economics has interconnection with every other aspects, the politics and the international relations and the social harmony. In the business page, now recently there were various news you would have seen in social media posts also that few of the electric battery vehicles they are exploding, and they are exploding because of the battery which is not stable and the technology is not proper as of now. So they are going for the companies are going for recalling of the products voluntarily. The ministry has also said that if there are defective products, you have to voluntarily recall before any other mishaps And now there are no rules regarding the guidelines for the EVs and the battery safety norms. So the government is very soon going to come up with a battery safety norms. The economic survey also discussed about the topic battery swapping policy. What is battery swapping? In order to promote the e-vehicles, the, the person driving a electronic vehicle, he can't in the mid journey way, he can't stay there and wait for few hours to charge the battery. So what if he can go there, go to a spot, exchange his discharge battery with a battery which is fully charged? So that would have been awesome, right? So with the same idea, the new battery swapping policy is coming up, wherein you can go to the prescribed place and you can swap your discharge battery and you can take the charged battery and you can pay some amount for that. So in order to promote that, Niti Aayog has released a draft battery swapping policy, and this would include both two-wheeler and three-wheelers. And in order to incentivize the electronic vehicles with swappable batteries, subsidies will be given to the firms which are manufacturing these swappable batteries, and technical and testing requirements will be given, and the GST also will be reduced. All these are done to promote the battery swapping. And Nitya, these are all the supply side incentives. When we are giving incentives to the firms which are manufacturing, and for the customers to purchase them, we need to give demand side incentives also. So for the customers, there are schemes for electronic vehicles where their subsidies would be given, and subsidies will also be given for eligible battery swapping vehicles which are going to come in the future. At the same time, as we have just discussed in this article, there are problems with the safety of the electronic batteries. And in order to ensure that, various battery safety and security of assets and battery safety, the swappable batteries would be equipped with advanced features like IoT based battery monitoring system, remote monitoring system, etc. so that you can see how much the battery is heated, how much the percentage of the battery is remained, all through your mobile devices or the display that is put on the vehicle. Fertilizer subsidies may increase. Now, because of the rise in the raw material cost, the input cost of the fertilizers are increasing. So the final cost of the fertilizers are increasing in the market. Because of which the subsidies the government is giving, now it has to increase because the price of the fertilizers itself has increased. The other reason apart from the increase in raw material cost is the Russia-Ukraine conflict disrupting the supply chain. So we are not getting supplies of fertilizers on time. When the demand is more than the supply, obviously the price would again increase. So on one side there is increase in raw material cost and there is disruption of supply, which is again leading to increase in cost of the fertilizers. So finally it would have effect on the government subsidy bill, because now because the price of the subsidies having fertilizers have increased, the government has to give more subsidy now. And there are also demand side requirements wherein the demand for fertilizers also has increased every year. As usual, generally there will be an increase year on year because the farming activity will keep increasing and expanding. So there are supply chain factors and the demand side factors which are driving up the prices of fertilizers, finally leading to an increase in the subsidy bill for the government, which will directly have an impact on the current account deficit of the government. Now, because of the coal shortages, again the states are planning to import more and more coal. Here, the crucial point that is important for us is the India is the world's second largest coal importer. You could probably get a question in prelims which says that India is the largest importer of coal. Currently, at this point of time, India is the world's second largest coal importer. You can skip this news. These are all the articles related to economy today. Thank you so much.